Today, we are opening up the files on what has to be one of the most compelling artistic contradictions in modern cinema. I mean, how does one actor, a guy known for being this profoundly deep, warm, and self-admittedly emotional
No,
person?
soulful teddy bear is how some have described him.
Exactly.
Mhm.
How does that guy transform into a figure of terrifying, unshakable religious zealotry on screen?
And that's really the mission for this deep dive. We are getting into Javier Bardem and specifically his incredible and, I mean, truly electrifying portrayal of Stilgar in Denis Villeneuve's Dune, Part 2.
Absolutely electric.
We're going to analyze the source material, all the interviews, articles, reviews, to try and understand the physics of this dichotomy. We're putting the fierce and frankly often humorous fanatic he plays on screen
Right.
against the grounded, deeply human man who famously cries during children's movies and says he actively dislikes violence in his real life.
It's just so much more than just good acting, isn't it? It feels like this incredible act of, I don't know, emotional ventriloquism.
That's a great way to put it.
You have this fundamentally soulful, dramatic actor stepping into the role of Stilgar, the leader of the Fremen tribe at Siege Tabor. And Stilgar, he's the catalyst. He is absolutely central to the tragically inevitable destiny of Paul Atreides.
He really is.
We're watching this stern, very capable leader whose belief just warps and transforms into a figure of pure, desperate, at the end of the day, tragic fanaticism. That's a huge psychological journey that the actor has to sell to you.
And that journey is rooted in, I think, the highest expression of the actor's craft. Bardem has to take his internal life, one that values respect, humility, and understanding, and use that as the fuel source to convincingly portray a character driven by this blind, deadly belief.
So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, we're going to unpack the deep philosophical foundations that allow Bardem to access that kind of menace while remaining, as so many sources describe him, a genuinely grounded person when the cameras stop rolling.
Okay, let's unpack this and maybe start at the foundation. Because Bardem's whole approach to acting, it doesn't feel accidental at all. It seems really rooted in the tough reality and the long history of the profession he grew up in.
Right.
This wasn't just a career choice for him. It was practically a birthright.
It was almost a destiny, in a way, but one he earned through observation. He started acting when he was 16, and he was following this intensely long family tradition.
And it wasn't just his mom, right?
No, not at all. His mother was a very well-known actress, but his grandparents and even his great-grandparents were all actors. So this immersion from birth gave him this profound, almost sober respect for the difficulty and the sometimes demeaning history of the profession.
And some of that history is genuinely shocking, especially for people today who, you see actors as cultural royalty. He's spoken pretty openly about the surprising and really tough historical context where actors were once heavily marginalized.
He spoke specifically about the reality in Spain, noting that actors were sometimes, and this is a quote, not allowed to be buried on sacred land.
Wow.
Yeah, because they were considered people who, by their very profession, lived outside moral constraints. They were historically likened to prostitutes and homosexuals and a little bit of a monsters in the eyes of the church and, certain parts of society.
That is a staggering thought, that the very act of pretending for a living was seen as morally suspect. And Bardem notes that even today, some of that lingering stigma, that sort of slight societal judgment, it can still persist.
He kind of accepts it with this very philosophical shrug, just saying, it's okay. But he witnessed the brutal economic reality of it all through his mother. It was never glamorous. He saw the actor's burden firsthand, and that instilled this enormous sense of realism in him about his chosen path.
Can you tell us more about what that looked like when he was young? Watching his mother work, that seems like it was the crucible that really shaped his professional ethics.
Oh, it absolutely was. He recalled the pain of witnessing that economic instability. He talked about the days when only hard lines existed, phones with cords.
Right, the landline.
The landline. And he would watch the phone knowing that if it didn't ring, it meant trouble. That silence meant the refrigerator was empty.
That's intense.
It is.
Yeah.
Because she was separated from his father, his mother had to take on lots of other jobs. She even ran a restaurant at one point, just to make ends meet when the acting work wasn't there. He saw, in vivid detail, that being an actor often meant being an artist who was poor.
So if you're listening and trying to capture the core ethos of Javier Bardem, the one lesson that rises above all that economic difficulty, it comes directly from his mother. And it dictates his conduct on every single set, from a small Spanish film to a massive production like Dune.
And that core lesson is humility. Absolute professionalism and teamwork. He quotes her, "You not special. You are part of the team." This is completely non-negotiable for him.
So respect.
Total respect. He stresses the necessity of respecting everyone around you, whether you're the lead with 100 scenes or someone who has 15 lines or, just one word as an extra. He considers it a practice of respect he genuinely strives to apply every single day.
And that's probably why he's so frequently praised for being completely grounded, even with an Oscar on his shelf and global fame. It's this deep foundational lesson he learned when he needed it most.
Exactly.
Now, what's truly fascinating here is that even with this grounded team player approach, he has this intense, inherent dramatic nature, one that was, I guess you could say, diagnosed in him when he was just a teenager.
His emotional core is profound, almost overflowing. He shared this great anecdote about his very first role when he was 16. It was a 16th century period piece.
Okay.
He was supposed to be in a scene laughing and playing around with two musketeers. But when the camera rolled, he couldn't do it. Instead, he started to cry.
He just started crying.
Yep. And the director, a legendary figure in Spain named Fernando Fernán Gómez, he observed this raw emotional output and just immediately declared, "It's okay, let him cry, he's a dramatic actor."
He never shook that label, did he? Which he admits with this fantastic self-deprecating humor. It's almost like a warning to his directors. Just so you know, prepare for tears.
Exactly. He owns it completely. He admits he cries in every movie he has done, regardless of the role. He even joked that he cried in a promotional video, a music bot with a crocodile for kids.
A crocodile for kids.
This consistent, deep, emotional accessibility is what fuels his intense dramatic ability, but he presents it with this accessible, almost humorous shrug. It balances the dramatic intensity with this genuine warmth.
And that sensitivity, it leads directly to his philosophical view on the whole purpose of acting itself. For him, it's not just about performance. It's about a kind of moral duty to understand other people.
He sees the job as a critical tool for his own moral development. His belief is that acting teaches you how not to judge, and it forces you to understand these profoundly diverse realities that are not your own. You have to inhabit the monster, the zealot, the victim, and the hero.
He strips it down to the essentials of, like, human biology.
That's right. He emphasizes that people are fundamentally the same, flesh and blood and spirit, and that his entire job helps him move towards judging less and trying to understand more. He's actively looking for the shared humanity in all of us, even when he's playing characters defined by their violence or extremism, like Stilgar.
Right. If he can find that human connection, then he can make the character believable and crucially relatable, even in their desperation.
Yeah, that's the key.
Okay, so here's where the work gets really fascinating, because the philosophical, sensitive Bardem now has to embody Stilgar, who is essentially the personification of a tragic mass delusion in Dune. Part 2.
Yeah.
Stilgar represents the complete surrender of individual identity to a collective, manipulated prophecy.
The contrast is so extreme, but Bardem's commitment was immediate. He took this massive leap of faith when he first accepted the role in Dune. Part 1, knowing full well that Stilgar was barely in it.
He knew he was barely in it.
Oh, yeah. He accepted Denis Villeneuve's offer to be in a, quote, movie that you're not in, motivated purely by his desire to work with Villeneuve and be part of that exceptional creative team. That respect for the director and the collective, it just overrides the size of the role for him.
He must have felt so vindicated when Part 2 came around and his character just exploded.
Yeah.
And he had one non-negotiable condition for the sequel, right? A personal item that tied all the way back to his first reading of the book?
Yes, the sandworm. He told Villeneuve that if there was a sequel, he had to make him ride a sandworm. That was his only thing he was asking for.
I love that.
It connects back to the incredible impact the book had on him when he first read it as a 17 or 18-year-old. And Villeneuve, sensing that pure fan energy behind the request, thankfully fulfilled that demand and gave us a fantastic piece of cinema in the process.
But beyond the sheer spectacle of the sandworm, Bardem was drawn to Stilgar's core ethical motivations, before the fanaticism completely takes over. What was the central human appeal he found in the character?
It wasn't the violence, it was the fight for survival and dignity. The core attraction for him was the fight against injustice, the drive to be on the right side of history, and the need to fight against power, in this case, the Harkonnens, that suppresses the people.
So he found a personal connection.
He did. Bardem directly linked Stilgar's struggle to his own personal feelings about social suppression, and that provided the essential human anchor he demands for every role he takes. Stilgar is, at his heart, a revolutionary leader fighting for the soul of his people and the life of his planet.
The Bardem also recognized that a story so rooted in this grim prophecy and survival, it needed moments to breathe. He needed to find the humanity, and he found it in a really unexpected place: humor.
That's such a key piece of insight from him. Bardem felt Stilgar's humor on the page, in the book, and in the script, and he was, in his words, brave enough to suggest giving some room to the humor in the film.
And it works so well.
It does. He understood that because everything in the story was so serious and so important, the water, the war, the Messiah, they needed those moments of levity. Humor, for Bardem, is what reminds the audience that you're dealing with real people enduring real, unbelievable stress.
And that humor is what makes his fanaticism so much more unnerving later on. When we connect this back to the bigger picture, Stilgar's journey is this microcosm of the tragedy of manufactured belief. We move from a logical leader to the face of religious fanaticism.
The transformation is truly dramatic and, I think, deeply tragic. In part one, Stilgar is a stern, serious leader. He's skeptical, protective, constantly testing Paul.
Right, very cautious.
Very. But in part two, he evolves into a figure of pure, desperate fanaticism. He is constantly ticking off the boxes of the prophecy, seeing validation everywhere, whether it's Paul's refusal of the title.
Which he sees as humility.
Exactly, it confirms his humility. Or Lady Jessica completing the ritual to become the Reverend Mother. Everything Paul does, even his obvious reluctance, is just more confirmation of the Lisan al-Gaib.
And we have to remember the Bene Gesserit's role here. Stilgar's belief isn't entirely organic. It's the result of centuries of groundwork being laid.
Absolutely. The Bene Gesserit seeded this prophecy into Fremen culture long, long ago, the missionary protectiva, ensuring that if one of their own ever ended up stranded on Arrakis, they would be received as a savior. Stilgar is the product of this long-term religious manipulation.
And the heartbreaking motivation behind this extreme belief, as analysts have noted, it isn't just spiritual fulfillment, it's pure existential desperation.
Precisely. This extreme belief isn't coming from a place of pure blind dogma. It comes from hope and desperation. The Fremen are dying. Arrakis is a desert hellscape enforced by their oppressors.
They need a miracle.
They need a miracle. And Stilgar is willing to throw his entire being into this faith if it means achieving the ultimate, seemingly impossible goal, a green Arrakis. They know that if they don't seize this opportunity, if Paul Atreides is not the prophet, they might never get another chance to liberate their people and reclaim their planet.
This context gives a much deeper, almost strategic meaning to Stilgar's crucial line. I don't care if you believe, I believe. It's often quoted as the ultimate expression of irrational, blind faith, but our source analysis suggests there's a far more complex, almost manipulative interpretation on Stilgar's part.
That line defines his shift from rational leader to zealot strategist. It's viewed not just as personal belief, but as a deliberate strategic choice designed to compel Paul into becoming the Messiah they desperately need.
So he's forcing the issue.
He's forcing the issue. By shouting that he believes, Stilgar is asserting the collective will over Paul's individual hesitation. He is voluntarily sacrificing his own individual judgment to the immense power of the prophecy, recognizing that Paul doesn't become who he is purely on his own. The Fremen are complicit in Paul's creation because they wanted to be bound by purpose and led. Stilgar is actively manufacturing destiny.
That's a phenomenal nuance. So the most fanatic character is also, in a deeply tragic way, the most pragmatic. He's weaponizing faith because he knows nothing else will rally the thousands needed to beat the Harkonnens.
Exactly. And Bardem has to sell that duality. He's not just raving, he's raving with a profound practical hope that is both moving and incredibly dangerous. His performance has to convey the immense psychological weight of that desperation.
So if Stilgar's fanaticism is this tragic form of calculated hope, what does all of this mean for the man who actually has to bring this zealous, desperate, but still human Fremen leader to life? Let's look at the immense physical and emotional demands of filming in the desert landscape of Arrakis.
Well, the preparation started with this intense physical and imaginative grounding. Bardem concentrated heavily on creating that Arab feeling and truly belonging to the landscape, filming in the punishing deserts of Jordan and Abu Dhabi.
This wasn't a green screen.
No, this was not a soundstage. He had to physically imagine what it means to live in an environment where moisture is wealth and survival is a daily war.
And of course, there was the uniform, The famous still suit, for listeners who might not be experts, a still suit is the vital, complex garment worn by the Fremen. It's their survival mechanism.
The still suit is a complete water recycling system. It captures and filters every single bit of moisture the body produces, sweat, urine, breath, and makes it drinkable again. It is literally what keeps the Fremen alive in that arid climate.
Must have been hot.
Bardem noted that while the suit was not as heavier as it looks, it was definitely thick and hot, which made conditions very challenging in the real desert heat.
He also threw in a very relatable human detail about the costume process between the two films.
Yes, the extra-large stillsuit incident. He shared a funny story about realizing he had gained about 15 pounds between the first film, which was shot in 2019, and the second. So he needed a bigger size for part 2.
Laughs. That's fantastic.
That kind of self-effacing humor just instantly cuts through the intensity of the character.
And beyond his own physical comfort, Bardem, the son of an actress who struggled, he always pays attention to how the entire ecosystem of the set is operating.
And this is where his foundational lesson of respecting the team really shines. He noted that the production spoke volumes because they were very careful with the crew and all the extras, ensuring they had water shade and they were fresh during the incredibly tough desert conditions.
That's so important.
For an actor whose mother struggled to find work, ensuring the welfare of the background artists, it matters profoundly to him.
Now let's talk about the irony of Stilgar, the fierce warrior leader, versus Bardem, the self-proclaimed non-fighter.
It's a hilarious contradiction. Bardem admitted he is clumsy and too lazy for fight choreography. Seriously. He joked that he specifically requested not to fight in the film, opting instead to focus on the rhetoric and, the sandworm ride. He did express a hope for maybe one little fight in a potential part 3. Maybe one he could manage from a chair, primarily so his 14-year-old son could see him take part in the action.
Despite his physical reservations, he clearly had Villeneuve's absolute trust when it came to the character performance, and that led to that unforgettable, manic, and totally unscripted zealotry in the Sitch scene.
That scene is just a brilliant testament to the trust a director has to place in a professional actor. It's the scene in Shani Sitch where he confronts the Fremen who are doubting Paul's divine status. Bardem revealed that he improvised the entire sequence in just 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, shouting impassioned lines like, "He's the real one, that's why he's lying."
On a set that massive, with millions of dollars and a tight schedule, allowing a major sequence to be improvised on the spot just speaks volumes about Villeneuve's confidence and Bardem's grasp of Stilgar's emotional truth.
It really does. Bardem said he felt like he was shooting a nice independent movie about aliens, despite the enormous budget. That spontaneity allowed the zealotry to feel raw, immediate, and utterly convincing. It wasn't rehearsed mania, it was born in the moment, out of Stilgar's desperation.
Moving from Villeneuve's trust to the deep bonds forged on set, we have to talk about the significance of Josh Brolin, who plays Gurney Halleck, in Bardem's personal and professional life.
This relationship is truly beautiful, and it's rooted in this famous cinematic joke. Bardem specifically asked Villeneuve for a scene with Josh Brolin in Dune 2 because, hilariously, they never shared screen time in No Country for Old Men.
Oh, that's right.
For those who remember that film, Bardem's character, Anton Chigurh, chases Brolin's character, Llewellyn Moss, throughout the entire movie, and it culminates in Bardem killing Brolin's character off-screen. They never shared a single frame.
So Dune 2 was this long-delayed reunion where they could finally acknowledge each other without one trying to kill the other. But the connection, it runs much, much deeper than a simple cinematic debt.
Oh, absolutely. Brolin was, in Bardem's own words, his lifesaver during the filming of No Country for Old Men. Bardem was going through a really difficult time, dealing with a role he actively hated, feeling isolated and very detached because he was struggling with English at the time and was working with a new American crew in Texas and New Mexico. He was just adrift.
And Brolin stepped in to fill that void.
Brolin really put me under his wing and took such a great care of him. He acted as a supportive cultural bridge during a very vulnerable time for Bardem. Bardem feels he owns him so many things for that profound emotional and professional support.
That raises an interesting point about the dichotomy of the professional and the personal. Does owning someone like Brolin, such a profound debt, ever complicate the working dynamic, or does that shared foundation just make the connection on screen stronger?
From what Bardem describes, it seems to be the latter. The foundation of mutual respect and history allows them to be completely present. Bardem needs that trust and emotional safety net to access the raw, volatile emotions needed for roles like Stilgar. Knowing Brolin there's a reminder of the professionalism and genuine care on set, and that allows Bardem to take bigger risks with the character's fanaticism.
Finally, let's look at his work with Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides and contrast the performance between the two films.
Bardem noticed a clear and, I think, necessary evolution in Chalamet. In 2019, for Part 1, Chalamet was, understandably, more insecure. I mean, he was taking on a massive, defining franchise role.
Sure, a huge weight on his shoulders.
The huge weight. But in Part 2, Bardem saw a transformation. Chalamet was commanding, he knew what his place was in the story, the very place Stilgar was trying to push him toward, and he took that place with authority. Bardem praised the on-set rapport between Chalamet and Zendaya, who plays Chani, describing them as brilliant, smart, and fast, a genuine show to see them working together.
So this brings us back to the core mystery of the dichotomy. How does an actor who dislikes confrontation and violence, who admits to being dramatically sensitive and prone to tears, so successfully embody these iconic, ruthless, and emotionally detached figures like Stilgar or the villain from No Country for Old Men?
Well, part of the answer lies in his unusual and often reluctant approach to securing roles in the first place. He is not the typical eager star ready to jump through hoops.
Right.
He admitted he is a terrible auditioner. He found the process really uncomfortable, especially while trying to navigate complex English dialogue and cultural differences early in his career. He often refused to audition in the States, which he acknowledges cost him some of big chances.
So how did he break through?
He attributes his success in America partially to luck, having been chosen for roles without auditioning sometimes, based purely on his previous work. This suggests his true power is visible only when he is in the character, not when he's trying to pitch it in a sterile room.
And his most iconic villain role, the chilling, detached killer, Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men, that was a role he actively fought against taking. It proves he fundamentally distrusts roles that are defined solely by malice.
Oh, he famously fought the Coen brothers on it. He told them directly, "I don't want to make this movie. I hate violence. I don't drive. I don't speak English."
That's a great list.
It is. He questioned the point of playing a character who performs nonstop reasonless killing. He loved their films, but he couldn't understand why he, Javier Bardem, should embody that kind of pure, detached evil.
But the Coen brothers' insight was so profound, and it really defines his success as a villain. They wanted him because he was so disconnected from the violence.
Exactly. They realized that because he was so far from that violent persona, he could bring a necessary distance and external observation to the role. He wouldn't inject his own enjoyment or understanding of cruelty into Chigurh. He would simply be the detached force of nature.
And that made him scarier.
Bardem noted that this detachment actually helped the character and made him colder, almost algorithmic. But he admitted that he was very broken inside while filming because he felt so isolated and was battling the role's inherent cruelty.
That is the ultimate meta-analysis.
Hmm.
His own discomfort made the monster more terrifying, and he even joked about his lack of enthusiasm for the weapons, right?
Yes. He confessed that the crew sometimes called him the Spanish ballerina when he was awkwardly handling the guns and that captive bolt pistol. It just shows how much work goes into creating the image of a professional killer when the man underneath is philosophically opposed to the act.
When he plays these intense, often monstrous characters like Chigurh or the zealot Stilgar, he talks about the specific goal of playing on a thin line. What is he trying to achieve in that ambiguous space?
His goal remains his core philosophy, to bring some humanity to everything he plays. When playing a villain or a zealot, he aims for that thin line where the actor knows the answer. Is this a terrible person? Yes, he is blinded by fanaticism, but the audience is left questioning the why.
The motivation.
The motivation. This lack of certainty brings interest in the audience and makes the character reliable. He wants to leave a pain there that I don't know how to read, a complexity that prevents you from making a simple judgment.
He makes a crucial distinction between playing a real person versus a fictional character in terms of his preparation. How does that distinction inform his approach to someone like Stilgar?
Playing a real person is actually easier for him. He says that's because there's a frame, there are limits to investigate, a biography to adhere to, a historical context that locks the character into specific actions. Fictional characters, like Stilgar, they require more time to make choices because everything is possible, and you have to be the one to define the boundaries of their psychological space.
So with Stilgar, he had the freedom to define the limits of that zealotry.
Precisely. Bardem had the artistic freedom to define the precise depth of Stilgar's fanaticism, unconstrained by historical fact. He could investigate and then destroy the limits once you are playing it, because the character, once he's framed it, belongs entirely to him. He chose to define Stilgar's fanaticism as desperation born of love for his people, not malice, which is a key distinction.
So given that he delves into such darkness and intense emotion, how does the sensitive, dramatic actor ensure he doesn't carry that darkness home with him? How does this soulful teddy bear return at the end of the day?
He has a very intentional, almost spiritual cleansing ritual. He does not like to go to sleep with the character every day because he doesn't want that darkness to contaminate his personal life.
I can't blame it.
He practices a physical and metaphorical separation. He goes home and he takes a shower to, in his words, let the water drain the scene and the character out of me. It's his way of literally washing away the intense emotions of the zealot or the monster before returning to his own grounded self.
We spent so much time dissecting the actor's internal process, which is essential, but we should also take a moment to appreciate the sheer scale and technical environment Bardem was operating within. It gives you the full context of Dune, Part 2's monumental cinematic achievement.
And Bardem's decision to commit to the film, even for a small role initially, was just so validated by the final product, Dune. Part 2 was a technical and critical powerhouse. The film received widespread acclaim. It was a box office behemoth, proving that complex, mature science fiction can dominate the global market.
It really did.
And it garnered serious awards attention, winning the Astra Mid-Season Movie Award for Best Picture, the Critics' Choice Super Award for Best Science Fiction Fantasy Movie, and the Saturn Award for Best Science Fiction Film.
And that success, especially the visual and audio language of Arrakis and the cosmos, it's so intrinsically tied to Denis Villeneuve's unique authoritative vision.
Villeneuve is rightly seen as one of the great modern auteurs. He was named Director of the Decade by the Hollywood Critics Association. His films are consistently nominated for top honors, 9 Oscars, and 8 BAFTAs across his career. His strength isn't just in the visuals, but in creating atmosphere and emotional weight, which is absolutely essential when you're dealing with something as heavy as Stilgar's fanaticism.
Let's discuss the technical excellence that creates that atmosphere, the world that Bardem was immersed in. The visuals and the soundscape are just groundbreaking and award-winning.
They absolutely were. The film won the Oscar and BAFTA for Best Special Visual Effects. But the artistry goes way beyond simple CGI spectacle. I mean, consider the use of sound. Hans Zimmer's score is a character unto itself.
Zimmer's score is incredible. It's tribal, it's spiritual, and it's terrifying all at once. How did that score inform the world Stilgar was inhabiting?
Zimmer moved away from conventional orchestral music. He blended the spiritual chanting, deep war drums, and synthesized voices to create the sound of the Fremen, a deeply ancient and religious people. When Stilgar speaks of the prophecy, the score underlines the weight of thousands of years of survival and belief.
It makes the world feel huge.
Huge and inescapable. It reinforces the tragedy that this prophecy, which was manipulated by the Bene Gesserit, has become a living, breathing reality for the Fremen.
And visually, the film made some huge stylistic choices, particularly when depicting the Harkonnen world, Giedi Prime.
That's one of the most brilliant technical choices in the film. The Harkonnen world used black and white infrared lighting to create that unique monochromatic and really jarring visual style.
It's so unsettling.
It is. And philosophically, Villeneuve wanted to show a world stripped of light, color, and life. A world of pure, brutal efficiency. Color, for Villeneuve, represents humanity and nature. So the absence of color on Giedi Prime visually demonstrates the absence of morality and life among the Harkonnens, which contrasts so sharply with the warm, earthy tones of Arrakis.
Finally, let's just revisit the scene Bardem demanded to be in, the iconic sandworm ride. The technical commitment required to make that look real was just immense.
It was a monumental effort. The sandworm ride was designed practically, using a dedicated production unit. Timothée Chalamet filmed his scenes on this complex, moving platform meant to imitate a portion of the sandworm's back. The actors had to use these gripping devices as the reference for the Fremen hooks, physically visualizing and imitating the sheer speed and movement of riding Shai-Hulud.
And this wasn't just a quick insert shot, right? This was a sustained effort over months.
Exactly. The crew used industrial fans to create a constant blizzard of sand, simulating the extreme desert climate. Chalamet estimated the preparation and filming of his segment of the ride took over 3 months, and it was done in these short, incredibly focused 20 to 30-minute shoots. This level of physical dedication, which Bardem demanded to be a part of, it grounds the fantasy and validates Stilgar's identity as a true Fremen warrior.
Our deep dive today has taken us on quite a journey. From the historical marginalization of the acting profession in Spain, through Bardem's core philosophical drive to judge less, and his spiritual ritual of literally washing characters away, all the way to his commanding, yet surprisingly humorous and desperate performance as Stilgar.
And Bardem's success in portraying Stilgar as the terrifying zealot is entirely dependent on his ability to infuse him with that underlying desperate humanity, that overwhelming hope for a green Arrakis that just overrides all logic and reason.
Yeah.
The film's tragic effectiveness is rooted in the audience seeing Paul being actively created and manufactured by the Fremen's collective existential need, and Stilgar represents that manufactured destiny. The profound success lies in Bardem's ability to embody a character that is simultaneously terrifying in his fanaticism and absolutely heartbreaking in his hope.
So you now know the personal cost, the philosophical investment, and the physical discomfort Bardem puts into every single performance, fighting his own nature to embody these great monsters and zealots. The next time you watch one of his iconic villain roles, be it Stilgar or the chillingly detached killer in No Country for Old Men, ask yourself this. Knowing he strives to leave that space of uncertainty, how successful was he in leaving a pain there that I don't know how to read? And did the soulful man truly manage to drain that character entirely away when he took his shower that night?